Chapter 6. After supper, Frances was introduced to the children. A plump, golden-haired little girl immediately raised her arms to Frances and said, "Mama!" "Aren't you a love?" Frances said as she picked up the baby. "You must be Lizzie." "Lizzie," the little girl repeated. Miss Hunter beckoned to a thin girl of dark hair. "Mary Beth, how would you like to be paired with Lizzie on the trip?" Mary Beth smiled proudly and held out her arms. "She likes to have me hold her." Lizzie cheerfully went to Mary Beth and giggled as Mary Beth nuzzled her neck, murmuring, "Don't you, Lizzie, Lizzie, don't you?" A tall, large-boned girl with a badly cropped fuzz of red hair scowled at Miss Hunter. "You should have asked me to take care of her. I'm the oldest." Miss Hunter's hands flared in distress. "I know you are, Aggie, but I thought—" Frances interrupted, smiling at Aggie. "I'm sure you're very capable, Aggie. A 3-year-old takes even more to watch than a 2-year-old. Suppose we assign Nellie Bobcott to you." "No!" A boy who firmly held his baby sister's hand stepped forward. "I'm George, Nellie's brother. No one takes care of her but me." "And me," a younger boy with about the same pale hair and red cheeks as Nellie and George squeezed close to the pair. This must be Earl Babcock," Frances thought. "A little girl takes special care," Frances began, but George interrupted. "When she does, you can help me." "Yes, I can," Frances said. She put an arm around Aggie's shoulders, surprised when the girl stiffened. "Aggie, I hereby make you the official first assistant. I'll need you to help me with all the little ones." "She can't tell us what to do," someone said. "Of course not," Frances said reassuringly. "She won't even try. She'll be helping me feed everyone during the day and make them comfortable at night and count noses at depot stops. There's a great deal Aggie and I'll have to do together." Frances could feel Aggie relax, but the look of the girl made her wary, as though she didn't know whether to trust what she'd heard. "I was an orphan train rider," Frances told the children. "When I was Aggie's age, I traveled to St. Joseph, Missouri with my brothers Mike, Danny, and Pete, and my sisters Megan and Peg." George Babcock sucked in his breath and held his little sister so tightly that she squirmed to get free. His words were barely more than a whisper as he stared up at Frances and said, "Did you stay together, miss? Were you all taken by the same family?" Seeing the raw hope in George's eyes, Frances desperately searched for the right answer. "No, we weren't," she said, "but we all found good people to love us, and we loved them in return." Her answer had been enough, she realized. Despair replaced the hope in George's eye, and he stepped back. An insistent tug of Frances's skirt nearly pulled her off balance. She looked down to see Adam Stowe and smiled at him. But Adam didn't smile back. His face was pale as he said, "My brother Harry and I have to stay together, miss. Our father said Harry was to take care of me. Doesn't anyone ever take 2 children?" Frances squatted so she could be at Adam's level. "Yes," she said, "sometimes they do." As Adam smiled, the color returned to his cheeks, and Frances looked at Harry, Adam's older brother. "You have to understand that many of the people who take in the children from the orphan trains, they can't afford to feed and clothe more than one child. Raising even one child is costly." Harry nodded bleakly, and Adam said, "It's all right, Harry." She said, "Sometimes people take 2. We'll look for those people. We'll stick together." Frances slowly got to her feet. Her chest ached at the hurt of what she and her brothers and sisters had gone through and what these frightened children had in store for them. With all her heart, she wished that Adam and Harry would be adopted together and that the Babcocks wouldn't be separated. But she knew the chances of this wish coming true was very slim. Frances went from child to child, getting acquainted. She could see fear in some of their eyes, a despairing acceptance in others. 3 boys, however, had jaunty, quick-witted good humor that had always been Mike's trademark, and she was drawn to them. Small, wiry, red-headed Eddie Marsh, with a look of mischief on his face, grinned up at Frances. His arms rested on the shoulders of Marcus Mello and Samuel Meyer. "Me and my chums are all for this train ride to the west, miss. We heard those trains can go as fast as a galloping horse." "That they can," said Frances. "Do the horses and trains ever race?" Marcus asked. "If I had a horse, I know I could beat the train anywhere, anytime." "Quit your bragging," Eddie said, and elbowed his friend in the ribs. "You never rode a horse." "Yeah," Sam echoed. "You ain't got a horse, and you're not likely to ever get one." "Don't be so sure," Frances said. "Most of the people who take in the orphan train children live on farms. There's always horses on farms." The boys stopped jostling each other and stared at Frances. "Real live horses?" Marcus asked. "Nah, old dead horses," Eddie answered. He and Sam whooped with laughter. Frances smiled at Marcus. "My wonderful foster parents drove me to their home in a wagon pulled by 2 fine horses. It wasn't long before I learned how to groom the horses and harness them." Did they let you ride them?" Eddie asked eagerly. "Yes, sometimes with a saddle, sometimes bareback. Sometimes I took them out hitched to a wagon." "By yourself?" Sam asked. "Oh, yes, all by myself." For a moment she could almost see the thoughts churning inside the boy's head. Then Eddie looked up and grinned again. "This going west, I'm thinking it won't be half bad," he said. Excited, the boys ran off, and Frances turned to a small, solemn-faced little girl looking up at her. Frances gasped for her name. Margaret. That's what she was called, Margaret DeCapo. Margaret crooked her finger at Frances, beckoning her to come closer. Frances squatted so her face was level with Margaret's. Although Frances smiled and waited patiently, Margaret did not speak. So Frances finally said, "What is it, dear? What do you want?" Tears spilled from Margaret's eyes, and her lower lip trembled. I want I want someone to love me, she cried and flung her arms around Frances's neck. Frances held Margaret until her sobs finally ended. Someone will, little love, someone will, Frances said. She was determined that every single one of these children was going to end up in a happy home with loving people. Mr. Friedrich, the man who had been so cruel to Mike, came to Frances's mind. She quickly shook the memory away. At least she could be sure that these children would be happy, as long as they were in her care. As Frances settled Margaret into a chair and with Jessie Lester, she saw that Margaret was clutching a tiny bundle of white. What is that? Frances asked. My rabbit, Margaret said. She opened her tightly curled finger and held up a very small white stuffed rabbit with embroidered black eyes and a pink nose. His name is Flops. My grandmother made him for me. Jessie looked solemn. Her grandmother can't take care of her anymore. Her grandmother died. As tears rose up in Margaret's eyes, Frances said quickly, Margaret, why don't you tell Jessie about Flops? Can you do tricks? Do you ever make clothes for mouse scraps of cloth? Jessie spoke up again. The butcher on our street kills rabbits for people to eat, she said. Margaret burst into wails, and Frances picked her up and carried her to a sofa at the far end of the room. She held Margaret on her lap, stroking back her hair and crooning up to her till the girl settled down and dropped heavily into sleep, tears still on her cheeks. A thin-faced girl about 10 came to Frances. Smiling, she held up a doll with a battered face. This is Baby, she said. Found her in a trash can, and now she's mine. She's lovely, Lucy, Frances said. Yeah, she is, isn't she? That's because Mrs. Dolan washed and ironed a dress for me. Frances watched Lucy as she walked off, showing her doll to Lottie. Suddenly, Frances became aware that someone was standing beside her. She looked up to see Aggie May Vaughn. Hello, Aggie, she said. There's plenty of room here. Why don't you sit with me? Aggie slid onto the sofa and gave Margaret a critical look. She's a crybaby, Aggie said. She's afraid, Frances told her. I've cried when I'm afraid, haven't you? No, Aggie answered. I never cry. She hesitated for a moment, then she said, I'm never afraid. Frances waited to see what would come next. When she didn't speak, Aggie said, even when I broke a rule and had to go without supper, even when Miss Marklander beat my hands for ruler and told me no one would ever want to adopt me, I was never afraid, and I never cried. I'm sorry that someone hurt you, Frances said. She took one of Aggie's hands, sliding smooth fingers across her palm, but Aggie jerked her hand away. No need to feel sorry for me, Aggie said. I learned my lesson. Miss Marklander taught me not to let people hurt me. I'll never let anyone hurt me again. That's why I told her, and that's why she sent me away. Oh, Aggie, Frances began and stretched out a hand again, but Aggie stiffened. She said I was a waif. Somebody no one wants, but someone will want me. I'm going to have a real family. I'm going to live with people who love me and are good to me until... Frances waited a moment and asked, until what? Aggie shook her head, murmuring, never mind. You'll make someone a fine daughter, Frances said, trying to smile reassuringly. Aggie looked as though she had something to tell her. Maybe she could be encouraged to confide her problem later. In a small voice, Aggie said, I'm not a cute baby. I'm not pretty like Mary Beth or Nicola. But someone will want me, won't they? Of course they will, Frances said firmly. But she unhappily remembered some of the farm wives who wanted foster daughters strong enough to handle the household chores. Aggie deserved a much better life than that. Miss Hunter's voice carried throughout the room. Bedtime, children. We'll rise early because we'll have to travel to New Jersey to get the train. There was a sudden hush as each child was afraid to breathe or even think. Frances knew what they were feeling. Tomorrow they'd be in a very different kind of life. Frances had been in their shoes, and Frances remembered. Come along now, Miss Hunter said. Off to bed with you. As the children filed out of the room, Miss Hunter spoke quietly to Frances. You got along with them nicely. I knew you would, you being a teacher. I know how they feel, Frances said. Those poor little foundlings and waifs, well, best you can, I suppose. Frances didn't try to explain. She listened politely to Miss Hunter's advice about how to handle the troublemakers and how to arrange orderly visits to the small necessity in the railway car and to the privies at the depot stops, how to keep the boys from hanging out the train windows or climbing over their passengers in the railway car. But Frances's mind went child to child. No matter whether there'd be tears or smiles, each of them was facing a difficult journey. I'll be fine, and so will the children, Frances assured Miss Hunter. She meant what she said with all her heart and tried to push away the doubts that kept repeating. Don't be so sure. You know as well as your own name, Frances Mary Kelly, that on this trip, anything can happen.